So we were on chapter 14 last time. So I kind of took
Yeah.
you through the general points of the chapter. And we'll go through some. I was thinking we could just go through some shloks today or some verses today, just to show you how Gita, what Gita says there, and then depending on how much time we can just discuss it or talk about it. It's a short chapter, and it's mainly about this gunas, the three gunas, and I think you guys know that pretty well, so we should be able to cover it pretty fast. Does it make sense?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
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 Okay. So you do know we did talk about what the Sattva, Rajas, Tamas is last time, right? We said it's not a, it's kind of the Swarupa of Maya. And do you know what Swarupa means? You must have heard about this term a lot, Swarupa, and what is a Swarup and what is not a Swarupa. Like the Swarupa of Brahman is Satchitananda, right? So Sarupa means just to clarify, Sarupa means the essential nature, that which doesn't change, right? So for example, they say for examples they give a fire. So the Sarupa of fire is heat. Wherever you may see different forms of fire, different shapes, different colors of fire, but they all have heat. Heat is the essential thing about fire which doesn't change. That's if you have a fire which is cold, you wouldn't call it fire. For example, if you had a fire और उसको लगा के somehow you had some flames उसे ठंड आ रही है, we wouldn't call it fire. Fire just means something which is heat is part of fire, or sugar is sweet. So sugar can come in many different forms, but the essential nature of sugar is sweet, so it will always be sweet. So if you put something which looks like sugar and you think it's sugar and you put it in your, how do you test it? By putting it in water or tasting it and see is it sweet or is it salty? So if it's salty, you know it's salt. If it's sweet, you know it's sugar. That kind of thing. And there's a particular kind of sweetness which is very different from a Splenda sweetness. So that sweetness is the Swarupa of sugar. So, so that's how Swarupa is sort of defined. So when we say that Sat Chit Ananda is the Swarupa of Brahman or of Atma, that means that is its nature. It's always whatever form you might see the Atma in. You might see it in different forms. Like you might see it as the world. You might see it manifest as different things. So all those are not the Swarupa because those things change. Sometimes you'll see Brahman manifested as the world, sometimes you see it unmanifest, sometimes you see it manifested as a human, sometimes you see it manifested as an object. Everything is Brahman. But the Swarupa of Brahman is Chit, Sat Chitanand. Actually, the Swarupa is Chit, you can say, because Sat means it exists. So Brahman always exists. Chit means it's consciousness, so it's nothing but consciousness. Not, I mean, consciousness meaning undefined sort of consciousness. We can't define it. And or awareness. And Ananda means it is always full. It's never incomplete. It's always Brahma is always full. You know, it's always Ananta. You could say. You can't say, okay, I take a part of Brahma. This is a part of Brahman. You cannot do that. There's no such thing as a part of Brahman or a component of Brahman. So those three things kind of define the Swarupa of Brahman. But you can have, and that's Swarupa, it's called the Swarupa Lakshana. Swarupa Lakshana means the the indication, the Swarupa indication of Brahman. लक्षण होते हैं ना उसके लक्षण क्या हैं मतलब कैसे पता चलता है वो चीज है सो स्वरूपा लक्षणा मीन्स दैट विच इज द एसेंशियल नेचर and then there is something called titaksha lakshana and titaksha lakshana means that which comes and goes. So we can say that Maya or this world is the Titaksha Lakshana of Brahman because it is Brahman, but it comes and goes. Sometimes the world is there, sometimes the world is not there. Sometimes the world is in one shape, sometimes the world is in another shape. So the Titaksha Lakshana of Tat Tiksha Lakshana of Brahman is this world, and the Swarupa Lakshana of Brahman is Sat Chitananda. Right? So that's how we say Swarupa Lakshana. So Titaksha Lakshana of say of sugar could be good, could be any other forms that sugar comes in. but the Swarupa Lakshana is sweetness. Okay. So that's so the Taksha Lakshana of no the Swarupa Lakshana of Maya is these gunas. That means when you say Maya, you say Maya is nothing but these three gunas. Sattva, Rajas, Tamas. That is what Maya is. You can't have Maya and say, okay, ये Maya है, but इसमें Sattva, Rajas, Tamas नहीं है. Right? Maya can show up in many different forms. It can show up as us, all of us, right? Because Maya is itself the Titakshara Lakshana of Brahman. So anyway, so Maya itself is not um, like is not Advait. I mean, it is actually it's this is a funny thing. So Maya itself is not Brahman. It's a form. It's not a substance. But you can still say that the essential nature of that form of Maya is these three Sattva, Rajas, Tamas. So wherever you see Maya, you'll see Sattva, Rajas, Tamas. And depending upon the proportion and the form that the Sattva, Rajas, Tamas takes, you will see individual objects. So when you come across a situation where there is all Sattva, no Tamas, no Rajas, or like so little Tamas and Rajas that you can't tell that they are there, then that thing is called the mind. So that's the mind. जो हम कहते हैं ना मन. And when you see all tamas, or close to all tamas, you see the objects in this world, gross objects of this world. So, like everything that you can see, everything that you can touch, feel, right, around you, it's all tamas. Mainly, it's all basically tamas, the tamas form of Maya, because it's the tamas form of Maya which sort of gets converted to these gross objects. And when you say, when you talk about emotions and you say, hey, I have this desire for something, strong desire, that desire manifests as rajas in the rajas. Well, the rajas manifests as desire or as anger or as a strong feeling or a longing or any of these things. That's a rajas form of Maya. So it's just to say that, you know, it's to kind of explain that although there is so much diversity in this world, it's all Maya basically. That's what they're trying to say by this Sattva, Rajas, Tamas. And you can manipulate this Maya. You can go from your mind being very tamasic to a mind being very sattvic. You can do that because it's Maya. It's not Brahman. You're manipulating the mind. You're manipulating the Maya. You can change it from one to the other, right? And the purpose of our purpose as sadhaks or as human beings, um, when we say antakarna shuddhi, we are trying to go from a tamasic state or a rajasic state to a predominantly sattvic stage. And that's where we'll get to now. Why sattvic? We talked about it last time because sattvic reflects knowledge, is the best stage for getting knowledge. So I'm going to share this. You guys can see this? You can see it, right? Mukta, you can see?
Yeah.
The others are on mute. Okay. So, what does this say here? So this is the 14th chapter, these 4 slides. So it starts from 14.1 and goes on to 14.27. And in the beginning, I don't want to spend too much time here. You have this, or I'll send it to you. You can read it. It's just explaining what is Maya. So he says, he's saying, my Maya is this one. My Maya is the primordial cause out of which everything grows, which is, this we've talked about. And then he says, Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas, the qualities existing in Prakriti bind as though the changeless indweller of the body to the body. So let's go to this one. So here, 14.9, it says, Krishna Bhagwan is telling Arjun that Bharata, Sattva binds in the form of pleasure. This one, right? So Maya binds us. That's a way of looking at it. Last time I told you that one way of thinking about bondage is that we are bound by Maya. And then we are release or moksha is the ability to go beyond these, go beyond the bondage of Maya. So now, from this angle, when you're looking at it from the angle of what does Maya consist of, how does Maya bind? It binds in various ways. So it says Sattva binds in the form of pleasure, right? Including pleasure of learning, including pleasure of Vedanta. It's all it's all a bondage in a way. It's a good bondage, but it's a bondage. So Sattva bonds in the form of pleasure, Rajas in the form of action. Here, Tamas, on the other hand, covering knowledge, binds in the form of apathy. And then he explains this further. When illumination, that is knowledge, is born in all of the sense organs in this body, then we may know that sattva is predominant. So, this is kind of where we want to go, which is have uh, sattva reflects calm, quietude, um, little, shanti. That's what sort of sattva reflects. And that's what we are trying to do with Antakarna Shuddhi. So a person who has a very pure mind, Antakarna, Shuddha Antakarna, will be predominantly sattvic. And then he says greed, physical restlessness, undertaking of activities, mental restlessness, longing, these are born when rajas is increased. Now again, we have to be careful here. So you understand this, greed, physical restlessness, etc. This comes from rajas. So um, in Vedanta, they talk about two kinds of rajas. When you think about, great kings like Raja Janak, for example, or Krishna Bhagwan himself, they are men of action, strong rajas, right? Because they do things, they undertake activities, etc. But they don't have mental restlessness and this kind of longing. You think of Ravan, Ravan is also considered an example of high rajas. He's a very ambitious guy. He was, and did a lot of things, learned a lot, did a lot. Very good, very smart guy. But he suffered from this mental restlessness, angst, longing, all these things. So the difference is when the when Rajas is accompanied mainly with Sattva, you get the good part of Rajas. When Rajas is accompanied mainly with Tamas, you get the bad part of Rajas. So strong Rajas with strong Sattva can become a person who can, change the world for the better, who will do great things, and you know, be there for humanity, do great things which actually benefit humanity. And when you have rajas, but the dominant supporting guna is tamas, because that means ignorance, that means a huge ego which predominates everything else, then you get a Ravan, you get a Rakshas. So both are rajas can be good or bad depending on what's the predominant quality which is which is there. So so when we are saying that we are becoming karam yogi means we are not saying because we are karam yogis, we want to do karam, we cannot get rid of our rajas. If we could get rid of our rajas, we'll become a sadhu or we'll become a monk, a sannyasi. Because a sannyasi has no rajas, has no tamas. Is basically a good sannyasi has only sattva. All they want is to learn. उनका एक ही काम है, मैंने सीखना है, पढ़ना है, सिखाना है, मुझे कुछ नहीं चाहिए दुनिया से, right? But that's not what we are. So what Krishna Bhagwan, when he says you have to become a karam yogi, he's saying yes, you continue to do the things because that is your nature. You have to do things. You are a kind of guy who wants to do things. And he was telling this to Arjun. But move from tamas to sattva as the supporting guna. So don't change your rajas and say, okay, I know, forgo my rajas, I'm just going to go into the jungle because that's not you. But if you can change the tamas part, the tamasic part to the sattvic part, that means you do rajas with a control of yourself, not based driven by just pure ego or driven by greed or driven by lust, but you do activities driven by knowledge, based on knowledge. Knowing yourself as not the doer, for example, right? Then you become a karma yogi. Then you have more antakarna shuddhi. So a karma yogi would be strong rajas with a strong sattva. Okay. What a lot of people think when they think about Vedant, and I've read this in with people who are actually very well known guys who don't really understand Vedant. They are yogis or something else. They think that by Vedanta we are just trying to turn away from the world. That we want to do is say forget all activities, forget all initiatives. What we just want to become some Sant Mahatma or a sannyasi. That is not correct. Vedanta doesn't ask us to do that, right? So as you can see here, you can see, anytime you have these doubts, you just go back to the Gita and see what actually Krishna Bhagavan is asking Arjun to do. He's asking Arjun to be involved and fight. Fight in the battle. Stand for what you think is right. Not stand for what is right, stand for what you think is right, I think is a better way to say it. Okay? So that's what this is saying. Again, this Kurunandana, there's another name for Arjun. There are different names for Arjun. So यहाँ पे वो कहता है भरतर्षभा, यहाँ कहता है भरता, यहाँ पे कहता है Kurunandana. So he's saying dullness, absence of activity, indifference, and indeed delusion. These are born when tamas is increased. So do you guys get a sense of what these three are? Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. And then he goes on to say other things like when the person dies and sattva is high, then he gains the worlds of those who know the highest. Then he gets a better world. He goes to a better family, he goes to better loka. And similarly, Rajas is middle. And then when a person who is very high in sattva and in tamas dies, he gets a very bad world, that kind of thing. So कहाँ गया वो? Oh, that's the next one. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So now, so this one, those abiding in sattva go to the worlds higher up. Those belonging to rajas remain in middle. Belonging to tamas go to the lowest worlds. So he goes from. This is the thing about Gita. In one verse, he's talking high philosophy and talking deep content, deep thinking. In another, he just goes down to okay, वो स्वर्ग में जा रहा है, वो नरक में जा रहा है. Though it's like a very. It goes from different levels, talking to different people who are going to be motivated by different things. So if you are motivated by where are you going to go next in your life, then this is also there, right? Then having seen this, then what he says is finally, when the seer does not see an agent other than the gunas. So this one, 14.19. When the seer does not see an agent other than the gunas, and when he knows himself as beyond the gunas, he gains or understands my nature. That means he gains moksha. So what does it mean? It's the same thing. Now looked at it from the gunas perspective. When we say, I am not the doer, Ishwar is the doer, or the body is the doer, now he's saying, when the person understands that I am not the doer, but the gunas are the doer, then that person is free. So gunas are the doer means what? Like it's sattva rajas tamas. So पहले हम कह रहे हैं कि we want to move from an identity which is from tamas towards sattva, right? Usme we are identifying ourselves with them and saying we are going to go there. And then he says, finally, you understand that neither of them is you. It really doesn't matter. But to understand that neither of them is you, you really have to move to sattva because sattva gives you the ability to understand this. Sattva gives you the ability to understand that sattva also doesn't matter. It's like that. It's kind of At the end of the day, you are none of these three. But you're living in this life, you're living in this world. And if you want to live a happy life, if you want to live a contented life, then having sattva predominant is a very desirable thing. Okay. But if you want to say, at the end of the day, you say, okay, I want to know the real knowledge. The real knowledge truth is that all this sattva, rajas, tamas, they're all parts of Maya. They come and go. The good and the bad, they come and go. You are neither of those. You are just Atma. So crossing these three gunas, 14.20, crossing these three gunas that are the cause of the body, released from birth, death, and old age and sorrow. And the embodied one released from the birth, death, old age, and sorrow gains immortality. Gains immortality means knows himself as immortal. That's what it means. Not that he will not die or the body will not die. And then he even says, Sri Bhagwan said, Pandava, brightness and activity and even delusion that have come to occur, he does not despise. So actually Arjun said here, this is interesting. He said, okay, so Arjun asked Bhagwan Krishna, Prabhu, what are the characteristics? I'm talking about 14.21. Okay. He said, Prabhu, what are the characteristics? By what characteristics does a person become or is recognized as one who has crossed these three gunas? That means who has reached, who is a jnani. What is his conduct and how does he transcend these three gunas? And Bhagavan says, Pandav, brightness and activity and even delusion. This is 14.22 now, 14.22. Brightness and activity and even delusion that have come to occur, he does not despise, nor does he long for those that have gone away. Okay, that's he's starting. As usual, he says the same things. Then 14.23, he says, he who, remaining as though indifferent, is not shaken by the gunas. And he who abides in himself, thinking that the gunas alone are acting, the one who does not move from the vision of the self. Right? And he continues. Can you read all this or am I? You can read it, right? And then he continues saying, who, being wise, is the same with reference to pleasure and pain, abiding in himself, the same with reference to a clod of earth, a stone, or gold, the same in pleasant and unpleasant situations, the same with reference to censure or praise of himself, who is the same towards respect and insult, the same towards the views of a friend or an enemy, who has given up all undertakings. That means ego and undertakings of the ego. He is called the one who is beyond the gunas. And the one who with unswerving devotion worships or seeks me, he is fit for being Brahman, having properly crossed these gunas. Okay? So there's nothing new. He says the same thing pretty much in different chapters when he describes a jnani. And again, it's not, these are just examples he's trying to give, which means a person who is not influenced by the gunas has, has samatvam, has calmness. So this is, I don't know how much of it, how realistic you think this is, but this is the definition, this is the ideal which has been given by Bhagavan Shri Krishna. And finally, he says, I am the basis indeed of Brahman, which is immortal, not subject to change. 14.27. The eternal dharma, the basis of everything, and which is the nature of happiness that is not subject to negation. Okay, and that he ends the chapter here. So that's the chapter 14. I'll send this to you if you guys are interested. You can go through it whenever you have
Okay.
time. Okay, so anything you want to discuss or any questions on this? Do you understand the concept of the chapter, how he's introducing moksha? Excuse me. You understand the three gunas, right? You understand what each guna does? how they interplay with each other, and you understand it's possible for a human being to go from predominant tamas or rajas to predominant sattvic and rajas and something like that, right? That's our objective. And you understand what moksha means from this perspective. To cross, what it means to cross the gunas, to, gunatita. Gunatita matlab one who has crossed over these gunas. So gunatita is the person who has been described here as the Gyani. So Gyani is called by different things. पहले एक chapter में कहते हैं तत्वदर्शी, one who can see the tattva. Then he says panditaha, one who knows the nature of himself. Then he says, in Jnana Karam Sannyasi, or Sarva Karam Sannyasi. And then here he says Gunatita. So, all different adjectives, but saying this, pointing to the same person, but from different angles. So the Gunatita, one who has crossed the Guna, is also the Gyan Karam Sannyasi, who understands who is actually doing the work, who has the Gyan, and by Gyan, he has overcome his karmas. That kind of a sannyasi. And the same person is also Tattvadarshi, who can make out the difference, who can tell the difference between what is Tattva, what is real, substance, and what is the form. What is the difference between Satyam and Mithya? He can see, he can tell intuitively, he grasps it. So they are all different things, different angles to come to the same point, which is we want to be someone who has moksha, Jnani.
It's a very nice model to use, to use this in conjunction with Karma Yoga, and to say by Karma Yoga you will become more sattvic, so that, different way of saying, so your mind is more available to knowledge.
Right. Exactly.
But one point which is common to all these models is, okay, I think it is practically impossible to go to these levels.
Yeah. I think
all the four models are conveying the same thing,
right?
But from a different angle.
Yeah.
But to reach that point looks highly improbable.
Yeah.
But I think we have some of all of this. We have some part of Tamas, some part of
try तो हम कर ही रहे हैं ना, try कर रहे हैं तो we have gained some ground on all these four angles, but to reach the summit is a long way off.
Yeah, that is different.
Actually, if you think about it, if it were possible to reach all these if it was possible to reach all this in life through actions, right? We are trying through our actions. We are trying to become from tamas to sattvic. If it was possible to change ourselves like that through actions alone, Advait Vedanta would have no place. Advait Vedanta would lose its fundamental tenet. Because the fundamental tenet of Advait Vedanta is that it is not possible to move to a perfection. From being imperfect to being perfect through actions is not possible. That's the fundamental tenet of Advait Vedanta. So if you're trying to, kya tha wo? That very famous, very nice thing that you would always remember. Parikshay Lokan Karam Chittan, right?
Mm-hmm.
Brahmana Nirvedan Ayat. Nasti Akrita Kriten. So, after having examined all these actions of different types in different lokas, in multiple births, a Brahmana attains Nirvedam. Nirvedam meaning dispassion. He says, dispassion means he realizes that these actions don't do it for me. I've tried very hard. I can go from tamasic to sattvic for a while, and then I go back to tamasic. Because if you can go from tamasic to sattvic, you can go from sattvic to tamasic also. It's not a one-way valve कि तुम एक दफा जा रहे हो और पीछे valve बंद है, so it's only one-way flow. If you can modify, if something can be changed, it can be changed back to, right? So Brahmana Nirvedan Mayat, Nasti Akrita Kriten. Nasti means does not exist. Akrita means moksha. Kriten means by action. Perfection does not exist in by action. Tad Vijnanartham Saha, Gurum Abhigachet. So that means to, so then he realizes it's just not possible. I can try very hard to go from, say, from from like tamasic to sattvic, and I can convince myself, hey, I'm making good progress, and then I'll make a lot of good steps, and then suddenly I'll find more steps back, right? It just happens, circumstances in life. So to understand that, he goes to a guru, and then he goes to Vedanta, because only after you understand this, then you really are ready for saying, okay, there may be a different route. Maybe then you realize that you can't achieve perfection. You're either perfect or you're not. If you're perfect, that's your Swarupa. You can't get rid of your Swarupa. If you're perfect, perfect is perfect. Being perfect is your Swarupa, then you are perfect all the time. Being imperfect is your Swarupa, then you will be imperfect all the time. The level of imperfection may vanish up and down. So, what is your Swarupa? That's the question you start asking. And then you realize that your Swarupa is actually perfection, is perfect. Then you realize that what you're trying to change from being tamasic to rajasic to sattvic, that is not you that you're trying to change. That is not your Swarupa that you're trying to change. That will keep changing up and down. So what is your Swarupa? Then you say, okay, my Swarupa I understand now, and you can't understand this through your sense organs. You can't see your Swarupa from your sense organs. So you understand that my Swarupa is nothing but Brahman, which is Sat, Chit, Ananda. Another way of saying Ananta means perfection. It's full. There's nothing missing. So that's my Swarupa. And you understand that Swarupa through your knowledge, through knowledge. That's why he said Tad Vijnanartham. To gain that knowledge, Saha Guru Meva Abhigachet. He went only to the Guru. Right? After trying everything, after trying all kinds of activities, after trying all kinds of spiritual activities too, meditations and fasting and tapas and all kinds of different things. Right? Then you realize that okay, so that's the whole premise of Advaita Vedanta. That is what Advaita Vedanta is. But still Advaita Vedanta says, as a first step, you have to try to become more sattvic. Because you have no chance of really understanding this, meaning understanding it beyond your intellectual level only. You have no chance of understanding this if you are not sattvic, relatively sattvic. You don't have to be sattvic 100%, but you have to be sattvic enough that you have ability to understand. And then only can you understand, because otherwise you are just kidding yourself. And that's why I actually feel sometimes this, when we get into Vedanta too early, we do ourselves a disservice. We don't really deal with the things we have to deal with ourselves in order to become sattvic, and we get enamored by this knowledge. That's a big disservice. So all of us, we need to, I mean, this is my lecture to you guys, on the podium, and I'm telling myself too, right? Not just you, is that we have to figure out what is giving us angst in this world and try to address it, not necessarily through Vedanta, but through whatever means necessary. We can't,
But these things, so
go ahead.
I was going to say these things are not necessarily sequential. It might be nice to know that even if you get exposed to Vedanta early, you still will have to go back and do the work needed. But it's kind of nice to know that
I mean, there are
that
different ways
different
of
work
thinking
is
about it.
there.
I don't know the answer to this. I have my own understanding based on my own experience and what I see around me. Others may have
Yeah.
different experiences. I feel it can become a distraction, and you can waste a lot of time. Um, it can become another. We all have distractions in this world, excuses that we make for ourselves, all of us, and this can become another one. You know, so that's just my own feeling. I mean, if you were to go purely by classical approach, what does Shankaracharya say? Right? Let's say my feeling doesn't matter. Shankaracharya says you will not be admitted to Vedanta before you have these qualifications. Meaning before you've gone through the Vedas and before you have Antakarna Shuddhi. That's a very drastic, it's kind of what I'm saying, but taking it to a very drastic sort of level. But that's the classical Vedanta. Right? Now there is another Vedanta, what is it called? The direct path, which a lot of people are now talking about, propagating, which is they say what Kiki's saying. Why don't we just let's learn, and then once we know it, then we will work on ourselves. But that's not the traditional approach. The Vedas ki jo approach hai, that is not this. The Vedas approach is very rigorous. You go through the early part of the Vedas first. By early part of the Vedas, we mean go through your life first and make your life happy and successful enough. Have good relationships, have good uh, place in the society, do well for yourself, find work with the pleasures and the pains and all of that. Then you'll be ready for Vedanta. So that's I don't know what the right answer is. Each one will find for ourselves, I guess. Anything else? Any other questions? Next time we'll go to chapter 15. I think today is what? Where is the... Yeah. Chapter 15 is very interesting also. It talks about a tree, like a banyan tree, and it compares the world to that tree. And that's another approach, another angle, saying the same thing, but now one more new angle. So you can see how many angles are there in the Gita. Or actually in Vedanta, there are even more which are not there in the Gita. Like the different koshas and, the three avasthas, all those. There are so many different approaches. They've all been put here so that, something will click. Something will click for us.
I have a question which
Right.
is not related to what we discussed today, but it's out of the context.
Right.
What do you say? Like, I was just wondering. I've also listened to other people and things. So it seems like when we die, the body, of course, is buried or cremated. I mean, ashes to ashes.
Dust
Then
to
it is dust to dust, and it is the subtle body which, since we believe in the reincarnation theory,
right.
it is the subtle body which survives.
Right.
And the subtle body consists of the mind and the causal body and what else?
And the senses.
Okay, and the senses.
The five senses of action.
Five senses.
Five senses of
Okay.
perception, right?
Okay.
Five senses of knowledge.
Okay.
ज्ञानेंद्रियां, कर्मेंद्रियां,
Yeah.
10 हो गई. 4
Hmm.
components of the अंतःकरणा, the mind,
Hmm.
chitta, buddhi, manas, ahankar, and the pranas, the 5 pranas.
Okay. Now, my question
19.
is, this subtle body, what happens to this subtle body? Where does it go? It is in this, when before it is reincarnated into another body,
Yeah.
what happens to this subtle body?
So there's a, there is a,
I mean, what do the Shastras say? That's
yes,
what
the
I'm
Shastras. Okay.
asking, not yet.
What do the Shastras say? Right, exactly.
Yeah,
The
I'm
Shastras
talking
say,
that.
yes. So it goes, there's a Shastra, there's a thing called Panch Agni Vidya.
Okay.
So Panch Agni means basically it's a way to describe the five stations of the body. So I'm trying to, I'm not sure I remember all of them off the top of my head, but I'll give you the gist of it. So it says
Mm-hmm.
like a something is cooked, right? To make ready, खाना
Mm-hmm.
बनाते हैं ना? So you have to do different cooking, and cooking is done in different stages. पहले तुम थोड़ा सा इसमें हीटर में कुक करा, फिर उसके बाद तुमने ओवन में डाल दिया, कुक करा, फिर उसको थोड़ा फ्राई कर दिया, ये ऐसे ऐसे करके. So the what goes is your subtle body and your jivatma. Jivatma meaning your sense of not atma. That along with a small anu of the physical body. That means like,
Mm-hmm.
see, because you cannot, um, you cannot create something from nothing. So your physical body doesn't die entirely. A little, it's almost like a molecule of the physical body also travels, right?
Okay.
Which then becomes the new physical body.
Mm-hmm.
So that goes to first Agni is the Agni of the Shamshan Ghat.
Mm-hmm.
Then it goes to the Agni of um, the heavens, right? Where something happens to it. Then it goes to the Agni of the cloud. It goes to a cloud. Then it falls as rain as to the Agni of the earth, whatever loka it is. Then it goes to the body from the anna, from the food which is there in the earth or on whatever location. It goes into the agni of the father, and then through the sperm it goes from the agni of the father to the agni of the mother, and that's the final agni, and then he's born or she's born. So that's how I mean, so these are very symbolic things. We have to read it and totally understand it. I mean, we can do it. I mean, I have read about it. I've studied it a little bit, uh, so I can share it with you. In fact, I thought I shared some part of it with chapter in when we were doing chapter 8, because this is not described like this in chapter 8. In chapter 8, Bhagwan Krishna says you go through either you go through the golden, the white path, or you go through the dark path, the lit path or the dark path. There are two paths that you go by, and I think I shared all that with you, but that was a long time ago. But this one, the five Agni, is exactly how this happens, is given in the Chandogya Upanishad.
Okay.
So I can, if you want to, at some later stage, we can actually do it. It's nice. It's a nice vidya. It's a nice meditation or contemplation. Is exactly what happens. So that's how they describe the path. And at each Agni, at each path, some new ability is given, or something new, some additional thing is given. And then the final part is the mother's body. And that's how it is born. So it's called you can Google it, it's called the Panch Agni Vidya.
Okay.
In the Upanishad, sometimes Vidya uh, is a name given to meditation. It's not necessarily knowledge. It's Vidya means meditation.
So, so the subtle body travels like this, but
Yes.
then it's also said that whatever karma we have, it is that the whole lot of karma of all the lifetimes is the sanchit karma,
Right.
and in one particular life, the prarabdha karma for that life
Is
is, I mean,
extracted.
comes
Yeah. Yeah.
extracted and that. So,
Is
how does all this?
manifest.
Where does that sanchit karma remain? And
So the Sanchit karma is in your causal body. So
okay,
okay, so there is the
yeah.
subtle
I
body.
remember that.
Yeah. So the
Yeah,
subtle
yeah.
body has your mind and this thing. Sanchit karma has the causal body is the Sanchita karma, and then your Jivatma, which is sort of If you think of Jivatma means like you are taking a pot, empty pot, right? It's got nothing in it, and you move the pot from one location to the other. So you can say that the pot has moved, the empty pot has moved, the clay pot has moved, and the space within the pot has also moved. Actually, the space
But
within the
it
pot
doesn't
doesn't move.
know.
It never moves, but you can say that it has moved. That's how we say. So that's what we call the Jivatma. This this feeling in our mind that every pot has its own space,
Mm-hmm.
right? This feeling in the mind is called Jivatma. Jivatma is nothing but Atma. The pot space is nothing but the actual space. It's not as if the pot has occupied some space. We have called it its own space. That's just the way we transactionally. That's how we relate. That's how we say, oh, this pot has a big space. This pot has a small space, right? It's not the pot's space. So when we talk about it like that, we say Jivatma. This my Atma goes with me. If Atma doesn't go anywhere, of course. But you can say that my Atma goes with me. So the Jivatma goes, the Jivatma travels, the causal body travels, the subtle body travels, and the physical body also travels. We've learned that physical body does not travel, which means this physical body which can be recognized, but the small anu of the physical body, a very small piece also travels. So nothing is really lost. It's just that this anu or the physical body goes from this body to an anu, an atom, then goes back to a new physical body, then goes back to another atom, then goes back to another physical body, then goes back to another atom. While the subtle body and the Atma and the causal body are nothing happens to them. And what is happening is that the causal body is called causal because it causes the new physical body. Because what new physical body will be there depends upon the karmas which are manifesting in the prarabdha karma. So the physical body depends on what karmas are manifested. So causal body is the one that says, okay, now these are the next set of karmas. Now when you say, okay, these are the next set of karmas, then you have to say, okay, what physical body does this translate to? What physical body do I need to get these karmas to be exhausted or implemented? So these karmas are the cause of the physical body. That's why it's called the causal body. It's called karana sharir. Karan means किसी चीज का कारण किसी चीज का cause. So जो हमारे कर्म हैं, that is the cause of this life. As long as we have karmas and we have karmas manifesting, non-manifesting, whatever, we have karmas, those karmas will have to be exhausted. It's like a beej. When you have a beej, it will put it in the ground, it will flower. So the karmas are there, so the physical body will have to come. So to say another way of looking at moksha is this cycle of physical body, its life and death should be over. If that's the way you want to look at moksha, which is a lot of people look at moksha that way, then what you're saying is for this cycle of life and death to be over, the cause has to go. The cause is in the causal body. What is the cause? It's the karmas. So you have to neutralize your karmas. You have to get rid of your karmas. Otherwise, this body will keep coming. Now, what you realize is what Gita says and Vedanta says is that you can try all you want to get rid of the karmas. How would you get rid of your karmas? By not doing karmas or by doing good karmas. Okay? So this is another angle of saying the same thing that we said before. You cannot actually reduce your karmas. You can't say मैंने अब इतनी संन्यास कर दिया, मैं तो कुछ नहीं करूंगा, चुपचाप बैठा हुआ हूं इस जिंदगी में. For the next 100,000 lifetimes, I will just sit quietly, do nothing, so that my karmas only get exhausted one by one. No new karmas get added. That's not possible. First of all, the fact that you are there and breathing is also a karma. And Gita says that very clearly in one of the chapters. Pashyan, Shashyan, ऐसे बता रहा है उसने सारे. He gave all eating, breathing, sleeping. He gave all these activities. And he said, all these are there. How can you say there's no karma? Are you going to not eat? Are you not going to digest food? That's all karma. So you can't get rid of your karmas by saying, I will now consciously make a decision not to do karmas, or to do only good karmas, or to do only bad karmas, or to move from tamas to rajas to sattva. You can try all these things, your karmas will still keep accumulating, good or bad. They will be there. So then how do I get moksha? Because the karmas don't go away. So then you say, you go to a guru, and the guru will tell you the only way to get moksha is by jnana. Because it's, and in Gita they say it's like a dagda bij. A dagda bij is a burnt seed. So when you have a seed, you throw it on the ground, it will flower. A tree will come. There's nothing you can do about it. But if you burn the seed, then it stops. Then it cannot germinate anymore. And you burn the seed of your karmas. You burn your karmas through knowledge. So it's very, very interesting, very nice verse in the Gita. We'll, I mean, once we're done through it all up to 18 chapters, we'll do one more class and we'll just go through all these important verses, just so you guys know. So it says this. It says that knowledge neutralizes karma. And how does it neutralize karma? How do you know? Yes, when you know that you are not the doer, you are actually the karma is nothing but doership. As long as you think you are the doer, you'll say, oh, these are my karmas, my karmas, my karmas. I have to get rid of them. I'll do this to get rid of my karmas. I'll do that to get rid of my karmas. मैं meditation करूंगा, मैं ये करूंगा, मैं वो करूंगी, मैं ये खाऊंगी, मैं कुछ करूंगी, सारा कुछ करते रहोगे. All these activities of trying very hard. And then you realize, oh my God, I am not the doer. This is the gunas which are the doer, or this is the body which is the doer. I am just, my Swarupa is fine the way it is. I have nothing, I don't have to do anything. I don't have to go anywhere. I don't have to change anything. I don't have to go to the Himalayas. I don't have to change my partner. I don't have to get a beautiful house. I mean, nothing. I need nothing. I don't even need to get rid of my house. I don't even need to renunciate. I don't even need to do tyag. I don't even need to give up and go anywhere. कुछ भी नहीं करना है. My, as I am right now, right here, right now, my Swarupa is complete. Your karmas are gone. Because you know then, okay, that is what I am. I'm Brahman. Brahman is not the doer. It's the Maya that's the doer. So that's how your karmas go. Because then you realize that your doership is not there. And once you know the doership is not there, then those karmas are neutralized, so to say. And that's how you reach moksha and you say, okay, no more. Then you can say no more birth or rebirth. Not that it matters anymore at that time. Because what does it matter whether you're born or not born? You're Brahman. Sometimes you'll be born, sometimes you won't be born. But at that stage, it doesn't matter. But right now, for us, it matters. Because we are not at that stage. So we are thinking, oh, I want to achieve moksha. वहां पे जाएंगे तो कहेंगे, moksha, what was I looking for? What moksha? I was always moksha. It's not like I've achieved moksha. Right? So, but this is how they explain it. So that's how it works.
Okay. So that's the confusing language, right? When you say, I realize I don't need it.
Right.
There's nobody who's going to be saying that.
That's why there is something, that's why you need to have sattva, right? You need to have buddhi. You have to apply your buddhi. You can't expect Gita and Vedanta. I mean, I can't expect Gita and Vedanta to spoon feed me with the perfect language, with perfect analogies, with perfect everything. It's doing the best it
No.
can. After that, we have to take ownership of it.
But does this logic of burning the karmas apply to robbers, killers, or bad action doers? Can
So
they attain
that's the
moksha
thing. Remember,
by
Sanjay, what did we say?
that I am not responsible for my actions?
You think about it. Can it apply? Because
Yeah.
what does it say? To have that knowledge, you need to have sattva. You need to have antakarna shuddhi. If you find a robber who has antakarna shuddhi and who is sattvic, absolutely it will apply to that person. But I would challenge you to find a robber like that.
Like that.
Why would that person be a robber in the first place if he had all this antakarna shuddhi? So that's why they say Vedanta is not meant for a person who doesn't know good from bad in the first place. If I say this to a robber, the robber will use that as and say, okay, मैं तो बिल्कुल ठीक हूँ, there's nothing wrong with me. I'm perfect. That's an extreme. But the person who's having issues in this life, who has some problems, वो भी अगर वेदांता पढ़ेगा तो कहेगा मुझे कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं है, मैं ठीक हूँ, I am Brahman. That's not the intent of this knowledge. Then you're missing the point of the knowledge. This knowledge is for people who have a clear understanding of what is good, what is bad. The viveka of the world has to be there before we are talking about the nitya anitya viveka, which is the viveka of Vedanta. So Vedanta is overlaid on a on reaching some sort of a optimal, some kind of a good range of dharmic living in the transactional world. Then you talk about Vedanta. And this is like what you just said, Sanjay. That's a clear example. This is one reason why they say in the traditional shastras that you should not just openly give Vedanta. In fact, and actually, maybe I'm talking too strongly about it. I'm just my own ideas are coming in here, but क्या मैं कहने लगा था? In fact, Shankar in Gita itself, Krishna Bhagwan says that one thing a jnani should do, or one thing a jnani should not do, is to confuse a samsari. You should not say things which the samsari is not ready to hear, and then confuse the samsari. It's called some loka samhar, some hita, something, I don't remember exactly what it was, but some such name, some such term was given for how a jnani should behave. But yeah, you're right. I mean, if you don't apply your brain and if you're not ready for it, this can be very confusing. But my hope is that all of you are ready for it, and I am ready for it too. Okay? Otherwise, I'm doing a sin thinking that I'm doing something good, I'm doing something bad.
That assessment you have to make, whether we are ready for it.
I think if that was the case, you would have left long ago. You would have said, forget it. This is not right. And you can see where people come and go with it. It's not like most people I've seen so many around us, they'll attend some lectures for a while and then, okay, bas, baad mein, later, kind of thing.
So, Dheeraj, my personal take.
Yeah.
I just find so many models trying to explain the same thing overtaxing, actually, because you have to go through each and every model and try to understand. These understanding these models are kind of not non-trivial, right? I mean, they have a lot to say in a few words. I don't know. My personal thing is it adds, more complexity to the process of understanding rather than simplification, because I struggle with, I learned this, right? And I understood this very well. And now, how does this new thing fit into this old thing, right?
Yeah.
It's like, okay, saying I love you in 100 different languages. And so
yes.
I need to know
Just to
100
make sure
different
it's all
languages
clear. There should be no iota of doubt left. Right.
Yeah, I mean, I just find that for me it complicates, because I have to go back to what I learned before and say, okay, how does this fit into it now? Right.
I would say that two things I'll tell you. Okay, one, you're not alone in such thinking. A lot of people, particularly Western, they agree with you. Okay, and if you there is a branch of Vedantins. What's his name? Atmananda. What shit? I think I'm getting too old. I forget all these names. So the direct path Vedantins, and they they basically are saying not only what you're saying, models are complicated, all these Sanskrit terms and concepts are complicated. There are so many concepts, the Taksha Lakshana, Swarupa Lakshana, then Chat, Sat, Chit, Ananda, then basically you have to learn Sanskrit in order to learn Vedanta. And the reason why it is so is because for one reason or the other, Vedanta has been inserted into our scriptures. And the scriptures are written in Sanskrit. Right? So, and it's been integrated into the rest of the Vedas. So the Vedas have been talking about all these different gods and all the karmas and all that. And to integrate it properly, fully, it finds many, it's like APIs, many APIs into many different applications.
Yeah, I
Right?
understand. Yeah.
So it's integrated very well into it. And then now to understand Vedanta, either you'd have gone through the whole of the Vedas and then reached Vedanta, then it'll be all natural and clear. Otherwise, you now have to understand each of these terms because you have to figure out, okay, where are all the linkages with different applications, right? So to fully get it. So what
Yeah.
they've done is they have extracted the Vedantic message or the Vedantic philosophy or Vedantic thought out of the Vedas and said, okay, let's discard the rest. We've got this core Vedantic thought. I'm going to build a teaching around this alone. And I'm just going to teach this. And to the Western world, it makes it very accessible. I mean, you can imagine to you guys, Sanskrit terms are so inaccessible. I mean, to me, who has now systematically studied Sanskrit for some time, I find it fun because I learn I can correlate it to my Sanskrit learning, but that's only me alone. All of you can find it very confusing. Even I find it confusing if I don't spend time on it. But so, what about a Westerner? So all these things that the new ways in which Vedanta is being taught is without is to simplify it in a very big way. So not so many models, maybe 3 or 4 models, just to explain. One predominant model, no Sanskrit. We call it non-duality, as opposed to Advait Vedanta. Just call it non-duality. It's the philosophy or the thinking of non-duality, and they teach. So that's one way of answering your question, or rather, I wanted to add to your question to say you're not alone. And if you want to, you can always look up these people and listen to them, and you might find them very refreshing. I found it very refreshing. I found it very helpful for me to understand the basic. And some of the things I understood from there, I could never understand from Upanishad and from the teachings of the Upanishad because they beat around the bush so much. So that's one. The other comment that comes to my mind when I listen to you is that the fact that it takes you so long, right, right now, to grasp the new model, and you have to go back and understand the previous model, it's a good thing that then you're being exposed to a new model. That's what Shankaracharya would say. He would say that means the connections are all there, but you still need a little pressure for the water to flow. All the linkages in your brain are there. The neurons are still connected and everything, but it's not a wide channel. It's not an immediate thing for you right now. You have to go step by step and think through it. And that happens in the beginning. And eventually it's like this. A new model, you'll read the first 10% of it, and you'll know what they're saying. You don't even have to read the rest, you'll see how it follows. It's the same thing. So that facility also comes. So in a way, what you are saying is painful effort for you is an exercise. It's like going to the gym. It's also painful, but it's good for you. That's how I would think about it from my perspective. But then not everybody agrees with me. So I also told you this is a direct path perspective. So whatever works. I'd say do both actually.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I just find, all this Gunas, the model around Gunas, I mean, while it's interesting and to understand and so forth, right? Um, we just finished a different model of, purifying the inner instrument and selfless service model, right? And so you get comfortable with that, and the knowledge, the underlying knowledge and how it all intersects with that, right?
Right.
So again, I'm saying, to
No,
me,
no, I understand what you're saying. Yeah,
yeah,
it's totally fine.
I mean,
Understandable.
I find, dragging Maya in so many different models and trying to understand Maya and in that different models is I find it very challenging, actually, because you get comfortable with thinking of Maya in one way, and then another model gives you a different perspective on Maya.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you're free to discard whatever you don't need.
No, I think the challenge is there is value in each and every model, but again, it just is very, it adds a level of complexity. Like you
The
say,
challenge is you'd like to be spoon-fed and nicely everything given on a platter and all that. And, unfortunately, that is not happening.
No, well,
I'm just kidding, okay? I'm not.
there is few, there is a, this is not, one model or two models or four models, like 20 different models,
But there are
right?
18 chapters, so there'll be
Yeah.
like 5, 6 models in there. It's
Yeah,
okay.
so
We're almost at the
that's
end of it.
really, so sometimes it actually sort of takes an effort to simplify, when you're doing
Yeah.
a model, just like anything else, you want to learn from it. So you have to kind of understand what's the crux of this and what's
Yes,
the
yes, yes.
noise, right? And you go through
Exactly.
all that work,
Yeah.
and then you redo it to another model, right? And
Well,
to another
you'll do one
model.
more, which is chapter 15. That's
That's okay.
that's a complicated one too. It's not, it'll require a bit of thinking.
I know you are the teacher, and you have to teach us
Do
all
one
the
more and then we are
things.
done. After 16,
Anyway,
17, 18, no new models. 16, 17, 18 is a repetition of just everything we learned. It's a revision, you could say. Okay. But
But
15,
Dheeraj, my take on this model thing is
huh,
it's good to know all these models,
right.
good to think about them, and the present problem I think is we have not been able to. We have to learn to integrate these models with each other,
Yes.
and different problems and different thought processes can be solved on different models, I think.
Yes, I agree with you.
You see,
I mean, that's
in
my
some
personal opinion. And
situations, one model might work. In another situation or any situation, tough question you are facing, some other way of tackling it might help you. It's just we have not been able to learn enough of those models and try to integrate them.
I
We
think
are
I think maybe
still in
maybe
that
what
learning.
Rajiv is saying is correct, which is that there's effort is needed to try to
Effort is
understand and
yes,
assimilate them.
yeah.
But and that is true. And the
Mhm.
question is that effort worth it? And there are two lines of thought on it. Some people say it's not worth it. It's not required. I just want to focus on one, and that's good enough for me. But
Mhm.
others like Shankaracharya feel no, it is. It'll help you because once you've applied the effort and once you've got it and integrated, then it's done. You don't have to
Mhm.
apply that effort every time.
You don't have to. वही है ना, since
And
we are in the learning curve,
see,
so we are.
for me
Yeah,
personally, this
yeah.
Gunas thing, it wasn't
Mm.
very important. It's not that I don't understand Maya or it's a big deal. But the Guna model, which said, uh, you know, Maya के तीन components है, Maya can come in these forms. When I
Mhm.
read it, by the way, this is not exactly how Gita explains it. This is my interpretation and understanding because I know enough right now to know what Maya is, what everything is. So in a way, I've tried to simplify it for you guys,
Mhm.
right? So I applied, and this came to me because I started looking at it from this angle, which I had never looked at it from here. So for me, it clicked. It clicked pretty fast. It didn't take too long, but it clicked. And it was, aha, oh nice. This is a good. This is like a good thing. It's the kind of, it gives you a new understanding of Maya. It's trying to explain how one Maya can become so many different things. So I found it marginally useful. Let's put it this way. Not useful for moksha necessarily, but useful to understand the Vedantic thought, right? The Vedantic approach. I kind of agree with Sanjay, but I know, Rajiv, that there's no end to it. It's like abhi to humne Gita padhi hai. You can keep reading more and more shastras, more and more books, and you will have more and more models. You'll get completely lost in them. At some stage, you're going to get totally lost in them, and you'll say, "Okay, enough. I am done." So you're right too. It's a very personal thing, I feel.
I think that's
So,
the reason that Buddhism is much more popular here in the West, actually, Rajiv.
yeah. I was so Dheeraj, talking about learning versus implementation. I mean, how do we go through some of the implementation aspects? Are there examples to emulate, or is that a completely individual journey that everybody has to do on their own? I mean, how can we learn from each other, right? I mean, I'm sure a number of us, given our backgrounds and so forth, right, have common, issues in life, right? And how I mean, can we? I'm thinking, can we leverage each other's knowledge and the work everybody has done um, to help each other out? And I'm more talking about not learning a new
Right, right, right. No, no, I
model,
understand
right?
what you're saying. So that's the power of satsang, right? I mean, that's what they say.
Mm.
That's why they say these gurukuls and all are very important because like-minded people who are on the same sort of with the same objective, having same kind of difficulties, are always together and discussing.
Yeah,
So even in Gita, they say that a true seeker is always interested in discussing about Atma, discussing about it. But you should not be discussing with people who have no clue what you're talking about.
right,
And then you discuss, you confuse them and confuse yourself. So you should be discussing with like-minded people. So that's why, all these gurukuls, people like us, they come together and they share and they talk and they have like, इधर तो कहते हैं ना remedials या क्या कहते हैं tutorials when, you have a lecture and then you meet in small groups with the professor to learn outside the lecture. Same thing happens there. There'll be a lecture and then you meet with the guru in small groups or in large group in an informal setting and go through what's called satsang. You raise just like what we are doing right now is you're asking me questions.
yeah,
We're not actually taking any chapter. We've done with the chapter part, the Gita part. Now we are discussing what is in our minds. So this sort of a discussion at a much bigger scale, every day, 2 times a day, with not just 5 but 20 people or 25 people, and not just with me, but with a very, very qualified guru. That is satsang. And so when our need is high, we will find the place where we go to get our answer. But our needs right now are not that high. That's why we are quite happy learning remotely once in 2 weeks, listening to something here and there, and going back to our world. That's the level of our mumukshutva at the moment, our level of need. But then there's also the other end, which is very high need. People who have devoted, they just give up their life. They spend 3, 4, 5, 10, 15 years, 12 years in an ashram, and they say, that's all I'm going to do. 5 days a week, 6 days a week, I'm just going to learn this. That's all I'm doing. That's a very high level of mukshutva, very high level of need. And that, so it's really, at the end of the day, it just comes back to you. Examine for yourself, what is your mukshutva? Anyway, I kind of rambled on. But yeah, you're right. The method of teaching is not only are there satsangs like this in a gurukuls, but there are texts which are written specifically which tackle the typical problems of mananam and nididhyasnam. What are the typical doubts that we have? They have like hundreds and hundreds of doubts. And even if you don't have the doubt, they will take you through the doubt. They'll say, okay, this was a question raised by the Purva Pakshi. Purva Pakshi is a person who doesn't believe in Vedanta. And this is the doubt he raised. And this is how would you answer it? This is how you can answer it. Now you have to understand how it's being answered and understand, oh, that makes sense or doesn't make sense. So, you're forced to kind of go through this very, if you do the Brahma Sutra, you will find a lot of this. Brahma Sutra is taxing because of this reason. Because every point they'll poke holes. They will raise so many doubts, कि वो doubt रह ही नहीं जाएगा. You'll be hard pressed to think of another doubt. Because hundreds of people like us have raised doubts for many, many years, hundreds of years. And they've recorded them and addressed them. And same thing with Nididhyasana also. How it's the same, basically, the same kind of thing. What are the issues that we find? In Nididhyasana, the main concept is called Pratibandhika Jnanam. So Pratibandhika means obstruction. Pratibandhika means knowledge with. Pratibandhika Jnanam means Pratibandhika Jnanam means knowledge with obstruction. That means तुमको पता है, the knowledge is there, but something is obstructing. जैसे आप बता रहे थे ना राजीव के you have to think through it. It's not clear like that. You have to think through at every stage. Okay, boy, ऐसे होता है, ऐसे होता है, ऐसे होता है. Okay, that must be right. So there's an obstruction which has to be overcome every time that knowledge has to be implemented in your life. It's not natural. It's not spontaneous. So that's called Pratibandhika Jnanam. Now, this is a discipline in itself. It's not just me who's feeling this Pratibandhika Jnanam. It's not me who's feeling the obstruction. Every seeker has felt it. So much so that they've created discipline. Now, Pratibandhika Jnanam is addressed in its own way. There's a rational obstruction, which is logic. There's an emotional obstruction, which has to do with our ego. Emotionally, we don't, right? So all of this is addressed. I mean, the answers are there, but still even then you have to kind of do your own analysis. You have to go through your own thing.
Yeah, I think maybe some focus on this part would be helpful, because that to me is more practical now, right? I mean, how do I apply Vedanta to overcome some of I may have fears, or I may have anxiety, right? And there are good days and there are bad days, and so how do I mean, I would be more interested in learning about uh, you know uh, how did someone actually connect the dots and really overcome uh, some of these kind of challenges, right? Or if you
We
have
can do part of it,
pointers,
in every session, we can put aside some time for it. And but that's your initiative too. Ask the question and engage in discussion. We can all discuss it. I'm as much a seeker as you are when it comes to that. I'm not like a koi poncha hua guru. So we are all in the same boat.
Rajiv, I really like this idea.
I mean, at the end of the day, we have to make this practical, right? I mean, we can continue learning about models and so forth, and but to me, I think I'm not struggling with the fact that I don't have enough knowledge. I just am struggling with, okay, how do I use it, and how do I implement it in real world situations, right?
Yeah.
I mean, so just as an example, the conversation that Mukta brought up today, right, about what happens to you when you die, right? I think death is one experience that, to us is, uh, it's some people will say, I have a fear of death. Other people say, I would love to know more because, I want to know what happens to me or what part of me, right? And I thought that was a very good question, Mukta, that you brought in to say, okay, what does Vedanta say about it? And, how does it all fall out, right? I'm pretty sure some of us also suffer with other anxieties, right? Money anxiety or relationship anxiety or, you know, um, I think it will be valuable to, um, tie our learnings to, okay, who had some success, how did they think about it, right? What did Vedanta bring in, to change your uh, your thoughts around a problem.
Yeah. Next time, whoever has such questions, bring it up. I mean, I'll make sure we finish our whatever Vedanta we have to do or the Gita we have to do in the first half hour, and then we have 45 minutes or more. Like today, we are an hour and a half, so we have plenty of time to
Or
discuss.
we can
Whatever
also
is
alternate, right? I mean, doesn't have to be like,
doesn't have to be.
one session, because I think time is also, people are sensitive, right? But maybe, I'm just giving ideas to everybody. I mean,
Well, so I'm telling you one way to do this, which is the traditional way, is to keep time for satsang.
yeah.
So that's what my guru used to do. She used to teach for the first half and then leave time for the. In fact, she used to say, "Don't ask me questions while I'm teaching. Just understand. Leave your questions to later, and then we'll have time specifically for Q&A. We'll discuss whatever questions come to your mind. It doesn't. We don't have to say I'm talking about only implementation questions. Maybe you have the implementation questions. Bring them up. Somebody else may have a different question. They can bring that up. Whatever is in your mind, bring it up. It doesn't have to be about what we learned that time on that particular chapter. Absolutely not. So that's how it's done traditionally. But we can do it any way you guys want. It's not that. I think it's better to do both, right? I think it's a balanced, time-tested approach. Let's try it.
Sounds good.
Okay.
I mean, I do understand it's, that it is, it could be personal and, so forth. But I think if there are problems or situations where everybody can learn, I think that might be a good
Maybe if
thing.
it's personal, we don't record it.
Yeah, I mean, that could be, that is always there.
Sanjay, Mukta, all good?
Yeah, all
Yeah,
good, all good. Yeah, I'm good.
agree.
Agreed? ठीक है.
Yeah.
So we'll start implementing it from next time.
Yeah,
So
sure.
I try to keep the teaching part to half hour, and then we'll open it up for everybody to talk.
Okay.
Okay.
Great.
So
Okay.
see you in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, guys.
Bye, everyone. Thanks, Sittu.
Rest of the day. Bye.